So we have seen some, communication coming out of Nyanza counties, particularly after this handshake between UDA and ODM. And there are those who are saying, yeah, it's a good thing, this is the way to go. And there are those who've come out to say, I do not agree that this is the way to go. One of those who have come out to say, I'm not really sure what we're getting into here, is ODM member and Siaya Governor, James Orengo. Others who have now also spoken about other issues, especially just pushing on the protection of devolution and saying that the national government is killing devolution, is the Kisumu Governor, Professor Peter Anyang'. And then we saw a group of professionals from Nyanza coming out to address the media a couple of weeks ago and said, no. I think what we think that Governor Orengo is out of line. He should not be criticizing this. We are in government, and now we should be enjoying that our region is benefiting from the fruits of this government. One of those who are speaking then among the professionals is Oscar Omondi, who's our guest for the next hour. Oscar, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Fixing the nation, one conversation at a time.
Fixing the nation, one conversation at a time. I've liked this this program because it's one conversation at a time. I've gone to other interviews like this ones, but sometimes you find an array of panelists who have different type of thought, and now it generates into like a physical fight, because you sit in a panel with an engineer and you are a political scientist and there's a lawyer here who sees things differently. But one conversation at a time gives some of us who come to these spaces ample time to explain where we are coming from when we think that there's some disinformation or misinformation in the process. And this is the case here.
Very good.
Thank you very
much. We shall get into that shortly.
Yeah.
But first, Janet is going to give you the day's quote.
Right. James Arthur Baldwin was an African-American writer and civil rights activist who garnered acclaim for his essays, novels, plays, and poems, and honestly gave some of the best interviews. And the quote for today is this: "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced."
I completely agree. Not everything that we face as a nation in fixing the nation can be changed. But for us to change stuff, we have to face them. I completely agree with this. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, right?
It makes a lot of sense that something has to be done. Though, while we are doing these things, we are optimistic that we're going to achieve whatever outcomes, whatever expected outcomes, but we cannot guarantee that that is what we're going to get. Yeah.
Until we face it in its totality.
Yes.
Okay. Oscar, you're among the Nyanza professionals who came out to address a media conference, accusing Orengo of undermining the Ruto-Raila pact, right?
Yes.
And because of what Orengo has been saying.
Yes.
And then also there is what Professor Anyang' has been saying.
Yes.
And then over the weekend, here is the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, who comes out and says, Orengo has committed no crime. Is that egg I see on your face, Oscar?
And you discussed with me and I discussed with you offline that probably semantics and a delay or postponement of whatever we were discussing. In whatever interview that you guys had with Lillian here, Lillian was like, it is a time to say the right thing, probably. And this activism and digging and fight for these political struggles. And what we are saying, we cannot be antagonistic against the center all the time. To where we come from currently, Latif, political liberties sometimes doesn't make sense. They become meaningless. Political liberties that we've been struggling for. When poor people are not able to enjoy political liberties, and what I was saying, and what we were saying, that now we have to struggle for economic rights, economic empowerment of this region, which the best we've gotten is the broad-based government. We've never moved close to the systems where we discuss, for example, I saw you guys discussing about 5 billion loan a day, for example, and whatever experts that we donated to the system were bringing something called intellectual capital to the system. And we believe that the stability that we actually needed, we've gotten the stability, although it has not resonated with the people because that economic emancipation of the people has not gotten there. But look, Mbadi, for example, has not even read the budget. But what we needed first was the stability of the nation. Because we got so low after those Gen Z struggles. And for example, what people discuss about the Gen Z revolution, to us, some of us, the lowest we got was getting the military to the streets. That was the lowest for us, because we wanted to have these spaces. We wanted you and Lillian and my dear sister here to be able to come and discuss things. But when we have military in the streets, that was the lowest we could have gotten. And that is why we think Raila Odinga and whoever, the decision was rushed. I think the problem with the Gen Z, the problem with broad-based government, there was no public participation. It was so radical on the people, and probably people were not given time to understand what is this. It was so radical because of whatever situation we got ourselves into. So I think whatever Raila talks about, Orengo, it's about managing of expectations, and it's a postponement of whatever we are dealing with the coming 2 years.
Oh, did I hear Janet?
Janet, sorry.
And Mariam.
Sorry.
It's okay, I'm still.
Oscar.
And Lillian is often told, hi, Janet.
Janet, sorry.
No, that's fine. Going back to what's happening with ODM, because there are those who back to the broad-based government.
Yes.
Then there's dissenting voices.
Yes.
I'm just wondering whether this is as a result of ODM maybe losing its ideological focus, or could it be a strategy to divide? Maybe a strategy by the president or maybe other people to divide ODM, because the dissent the cracks are beginning to show. So which is it? Is the ideological focus still the same and united, or is there maybe an attempt to divide the party?
I mean, I don't think there's an attempt to divide the party. In a democracy, everybody have the right. Like, for example, what Honorable Raila discussed in Homa Bay the other day, that Orengo has a right. A right, yes, democratic right. We don't want to infringe on individuals' expression, freedom to express. Those freedoms must be enjoyed. But still, the ideological thing that we're talking about now is that these struggles, be it, we've been at the forefront in human rights struggles. You know, we've gotten this devolution that is not working for us, for example. Yeah, and it has been a struggle ever since. You know, we lost it when we had the session paper number 10 of 1965, when this paper said that areas that have high resources should be given more, and this marginalized other areas in the country. And when we brought devolution, we thought this was going to be a stabilizing factor. But devolution has not worked, because still the center holds 85%. So even people are telling us that, like, the constitution is okay. No, it's not okay for us. Yeah, because we feel that even the devolution, having only 15% out of the entire 100% that we have, we are not at the discussion table, for example. For example, you know, even if you give us 15% and we still pay a loan of 5 billion a day, so it is still meaningless. So we are saying that we want to be part of the economic empowerment. We want to be part of discussion about the economy. How does the economy look, and how does it affect our people directly? For instance, an agenda that we get to the table when we have election agenda, you know, people discuss about the price of milk, the price of coffee, the price of, at the expense of the price of sugar and the price of rice. And our leaders have been there within the ODM structure you're talking about, discussing about rights, economic, democratic rights, right to speech, right to what, rights. Yes, they're good, but they're meaningless when we don't have economic equality.
But it sounds like you're reading from, I don't want to say different scripts. I think I'm trying to understand where the pain point is, because it sounds like, yes, we do want to fight for economic rights and access, but just like Latif said, it's the way in which you're agreeing or disagreeing has become very publicly obvious, you know? So I'm just trying to figure out, where is that pain point of disagreement, where you have some folks saying, no, we don't agree with this broad-based, and then we have people like you saying, no, when Baba says something, that is what we're going for. Where is the disagreement? Where is the divide coming in?
The divide coming in that we've been at the forefront of fighting of this political rights, at the forefront as a community of fighting for these political rights. But 60 years down the line, they're not yielding anything. So we want to change focus. We don't want a situation where even small kids say, "Serikali haipendi sisi." You get me right? We have that radical thing that has gone on for a long time. Even in central Kenya, there's been a political call against particular people, the young people believe that probably Wajaluo hapendi sisi and all this. You know, we want even the politician in Central to discuss that Kenya is Kenya and we have Project Kenya. And when we have a loan like this one, we have to deal with it as Kenya. And even Luo Nyanza, tell the small kids that really government is not a bad thing to be with. Government is a bad thing to work for. For example, whatever Orengo is moving us to, is moving us towards that agitation. And he has been on record several times when we got close to this, he's never supported. And even now, what Baba is trying to say, that we stick in government, but he's been destructive. You know what Latif was talking about in 2002 when he decided, okay, I'll run because we supported Mwai Kibaki as a community. It was a decision, an intentional decision of a community. For example,
is it community?
It is community. For example, I'll tell you.
When you say we, I just want to be clear going forward. Whenever you say we, are you referring to? By the way, are you a supporter of ODM?
Yes, I'm a supporter of ODM.
Are you referring to ODM or are you referring to the people of Luo Nyanza?
I'm talking about the community.
The community.
The people of... Because what evidence do we have of this? For example, when we voted in Mwai Kibaki, in the numbers we voted, that is evidence enough that the community believed in that leadership and voted for it, for example, as a community. And Latif, I will tell you for a fact. So if you go to, for example, the European political system in Europe, people mobilize based on social classes. Then we have social, like Labour Party or this. This is a workers' party. They mobilize like that. In Kenya, we mobilize based on tribe. That is the truth. That is the truth. That is how, no matter how...
I'm seeing your change of tact. You're saying you catch more, is it flies with honey than vinegar, something. I can't remember the exact saying, but I'm seeing you want a change of tact. It's been 60 years. Being antagonistic hasn't helped, quote unquote. You said that.
Yes.
You said there's no need to antagonize the system.
Yes.
Is that true even when the system is antagonizing you?
There's no need to antagonize the system. And you're asking me, is it true even the system is antagonizing us? Yes, the system can antagonize us. But we thought that for the closest we've gotten to be able to make a decision at the table on... is broad-based government.
The closest you've gotten?
The closest we've gotten as a community.
But Raila was prime minister.
Yes.
I think that's closer than broad-based government.
Yes.
So then that's closer.
Yes.
Was there any noticeable change for the community then versus now? Why do you think now is, this broad-based is closer to power than Raila Odinga being prime minister?
You see, when we've gone for the top seat and pushing Raila to be a prime minister, you see how did we get there? We pushed to the push when he has lost an election or when he said that he's lost an election, and now it is a demand that we have to have 50-50 sharing of government, which the way he got there, and again the problem, when Raila got to become as a prime minister, he went there again complaining, we're not doing this, ile mambo ya nusu mkate, and we were not there, like our heart was not really in that system. We were antagonistic in the system while inside the system again.
What do you mean the heart was not in the system?
The heart is not in the system by I'm saying that there was still that antagonism.
Why?
Why? Because...
Based on what? Raila, we just use the term prime minister for just to have political sanity. Yes. The reality is that Raila was the co-president of this republic between 2008 and 2013.
Yes.
Even the accord that they signed with Mwai Kibaki was sharing power. Sharing power. They went to parliament and created this position of prime minister, which was nobody else could have become prime minister. Nobody would even have dared to elect anybody else from parliament to become prime minister. And all decisions that were being made by Mwai Kibaki, he had to consult and agree with Raila. All decisions that had to be made by Raila had to be consulted and agreed with. So there were two presidents in this country at that time.
Yes.
What do you mean the heart was elsewhere?
And you remember when...
Why would the heart be...
Remember when he was prime minister and everything had to be consulted. He even ended up firing some two ministers, a minister, I think, for higher education then. And there was a maize scandal, and William Ruto was fired by Raila, and Kibaki said, no, you can't fire them. Let them work. You get me right? Because as much as we were inside, we were still seen as members of the opposition. And still, even today, some other people feel that the Luos are better in opposition. Serikali kuna shida. Serikali kuna shida. Serikali kuna shida. Mbona Raila amenyamaza? Mbona Wajaluo waendi maandamano?
Step here, all right? Are we saying that between 2008 and 2013, that there was no representation of Nyanza in government.
There was representation of Nyanza in government.
At the highest level of government.
Yes, but I will take you through something. I will take you through
With the
something.
Nusumkate.
Yeah, or whatever.
He said on paper. He whispered, he muttered on paper under
yes,
his
is it on
breath.
paper?
Yes. I said, Janet got to me when I said, it's on paper because when we went there again, the idea was about the struggles, whatever we wanted to achieve. And in that process, we got even the new constitution and new Katiba. You get me right? Because the constitution was supposed to be put in place immediately after the 202 elections. But when did we get it? After the 205 referendum, which came up with the idea of devolution, knowing that the national cake now, everybody will have to get it. But 15 years down the line, from 205 to 2025, that is... 2010 to 2025, we've had devolution. But we are still having the same struggles with the devolution. That means that even the new constitution and that agitation has not worked for us because we only get 15%. So the center still holds more. And how do we deal with the center? Do we deal with the center by being through and through antagonistic? And the opportunity that arose and the broad-based government was put in place, and we brought in these experts and who are coming up with what we call intellectual capital to stabilize the country and make sure that everybody at least gets. And this is what Dr. Buru talks about, that give the other place the equal share. And why are we talking about this one? Because the person who has the biggest influence of the 85% that remains in the center is still the presidency. And antagonizing the center has not helped us for 60 years.
So now, how many Luo people do we have in cabinet?
Currently?
Yes.
There are two.
Two?
Yes.
And that's who?
That is Opio Wandai and John Badi.
Is that good?
That is good.
That's good?
For now.
Okay.
It's not the best thing.
So
it's Janet...
It's one quote, more than you had before the broad-based.
The quote Janet gave was that even if it doesn't work, but at least you try.
Okay.
So the little that we have, and again, in which cabinet, Latif, you know very well, that we call these places, we call these states, we call them states and what have you, countries. Today we don't call them countries anymore. We call them economies, the Chinese economy, the Kenyan economy, the Ugandan economy. So treasury and the economy and management of our public debt, for example, is a very important thing for us. So it's not about Luos in cabinet, but what positions. You know, the economy is run by energy. So it's not just...
So the two, because of the position that they occupy, is much better
at least
than Eliud Owalo being there and being the cabinet secretary for ICT and
at least because elections didn't get us the expected results that we wanted. And elections are, you know, people who control who influence public policies and what have you are the people with economic power because they're able to buy judges. We can, you know, when we sit and do elections and believe that we voted right and everything is okay, some other few people will sit down and say, oh, how many judges are there in the Supreme Court? Oh, there's 7. Okay, how much do you think we can give so that this thing is tilted this way, for example. The person who has the economic power calls the shot all the time against all liberties that we've always enjoyed, for example. We might have all the liberties and all these things that we've always struggled for, but at the end of the day, if you don't have economic power, those liberties become meaningless and useless. That is what I believe. And disrupting whatever these people who came to inject the intellectual capital in government is not something good for all of us,
so
not even for...
Oscar.
Yes.
When Eliud Owalo was in cabinet, as cabinet secretary...
In charge of what?
For ICT.
Oh, ICT, right.
And the digital economy.
And the digital economy.
One of the 5 pillars of the Kenya Kwanza administration, the digital economy.
Yeah.
Did the Luo feel that they were in government?
Not really.
Okay, hold on.
Not really.
When Dr. Raymond Omolo was appointed as the principal secretary in charge of Interior and the coordination of government,
yes.
Did you feel like you're in government?
Yes, it's a bit influential position.
When Alfred Kombudo was appointed as PS for trade, did you feel like you're in government?
Ishi. It's about positions that you hold.
Trade is not as big as...
Positions of influence. For example, trade and treasury. You see, you create some of these ministries, but sometimes you don't send money to those ministries. And that's what we're talking about, even devolution. If you create devolution in paper and you don't send money to the counties, it becomes meaningless and useless.
Okay. So now that you have John Badi in the Treasury,
Yes,
and Opio Ondai in energy,
yes,
now you feel like in government. Finally you're in government.
Because for the last 6 months or 3 months that John Badi has been held at the helm of that ministry, there's stability that we enjoy. For example, this management of our public
Nyanza?
debt. Not in Nyanza. I say that when we sent these so-called experts to inject social capital, not social capital, but intellectual capital in government, we have seen a lot of positive results from the system.
How is it benefiting Nyanza?
How is benefiting Nyanza?
Yes.
At least when we sit to make decisions at that table, we make decisions for everybody. Everybody, as in the intellectual capacity of this individual who has brought the economy, and at least the shops that were closing are now open. I think the Kenya Kwanza, when it took government, there was lack of that intellectual capital in it. And we need to inject a little bit of intellectual capital in it. The Azimio side, give it. I think they had a lot
What's
of...
the benefit to Nyanza that Opio Ondai is a minister today and John Badi is a minister?
Briefly, as we go into
And how different is that from Eliud Owalo being a minister?
Apart from Eliud Owalo, let me tell you, for example, energy. When you see those people in Ugenya or in Nyanza celebrating a transformer, when Opio Ondai or anybody brings a transformer to our people, then they celebrate, then there's jubilation. It is because these people have never seen power for the last 60 years. It's a big thing to them. But other places where I told you, session paper number 10, decided to give the economic power that we inject there so that it products, and they believed that it was the right thing to do. But we believed at 1965 that there will be a trickle-down effect and everybody will get. But after 60 years, that trickle-down effect has not brought anything to us.
Oscar, let's take a break.
Yes.
We'll come back and continue this conversation shortly. Oscar Omondi is a political scientist and a lecturer of political science, and he's among the Nyanza professionals who have come out to say, no, what Orengo is saying is not right. Orengo should just keep quiet. Tuko kwa serikali sasa. It is our turn to be in government. We'll continue this conversation shortly. The Raila Orengo Nyong'o riddle. Back in a moment.
Love it. Yeah, there's already a bit of feedback. Before later, we'll see if we can sample some questions. My prince says, Orengo simply said, development is a right, not a favor. Kenyans should get services because they pay taxes, period. Somebody else here is saying that you're looking for a job in State House. It's at the same, my prince, Oscar is he's seeking State House attention. He's indirectly asking for a job. A lot of feedback coming in. There's somebody else.
A lot of it, by the way, Oscar, people are not getting the gist of your argument.
Of my argument.
Because you and your fellow Nyanza professionals, you call yourself Ramogi what?
Caucus. Ramogi Professional Caucus.
The Ramogi Professional Caucus.
Yes.
You came out and you appear to have been holding a gun and just pointing it at Orengo.
Yeah.
And what he was saying.
Yeah.
And saying he's an embarrassment.
Yes.
He's not only embarrassing the community,
yes,
he's also embarrassing the leader,
yes,
Raila Odinga.
Yes.
That seems to have been your beef.
Yes.
But nobody's getting what exactly is the issue. Yeah.
The issue was that he was being a bit disruptive. And to some of us, probably we didn't say, sorry, we called for impeachment, but probably sometimes to stop the governors, you mentioned the word impeachment, and then they will say, okay, there's a problem here. But what we meant by him embarrassing the leader, because the leader has taken a course, that our course for this particular time, stabilize the country, stabilize the economy, let's get some order, let's stabilize the political system, and it is working. Mbadi and the experts that we donated to the same government have not even read their first budget, for example. You're already antagonizing and disrupting. We are not saying that whatever Orengo was saying was nonsensical. It is not nonsensical. It is an important thing. But we are saying we cannot be the lead all the time to disrupt. You see, let us get some order first. Let's see how we pay our 5 billion bills, our 5 billion loans, and Mbadi is doing the right thing. But if you become so disruptive that Mbadi has to go over the weekend, instead of making sure that he does some things with the IMF and see how our shops gets opened and the economy gets back to order, And because of the Gen Zs, what was the problem with the Gen Zs? The Gen Zs, people who have master's degree in medical science, are not able to get jobs in this country anymore. A master's degree in medical science becomes useless, for example.
But is constructive criticism disruptive?
It's not disruptive. What we are saying that his voice is a very big voice. And at this particular time, we've got some calm. Orengo is a small person. And from what Latif was saying, that he is his own person. Yes, activism is good. But the position that you are holding now, you are governor. See how the people of Siaya's county and Manis are managed better in Siaya. But the center wants some calm, because we have the Waminyoros of this world who are also a bit disruptive on whatever they're saying, because they're into elections, putting the country election mood at this particular time. I don't refuse that it's bad to discuss the election of 2027, but we must make sure that we get things in order so that we get to 2027 tomorrow. You get me right? So it is not disrupt. I'm not saying what Orengo is saying was nonsensical. And even what Raila is saying about that Orengo did not commit a crime is not nonsensical. We are saying that currently we are interested more in economic well-being and economic rights as a community, as opposed to the meaningless freedoms that we've struggled for through and through all the years and has not impacted in the livelihood of this particular
And
people.
what did Orengo say that was out of order?
I said what Orengo said is not really nonsensical.
Okay.
Yes, what he said is not really nonsensical.
Was he saying
But it became disruptive and we had to stop like, okay.
How was it disruptive?
It was disruptive because it was just antagonizing the center. At the time when other things that matter to us are being discussed and being conversed in the center, yes, we know these issues should be discussed. But even the abductions, and they've stopped. And we are struggling to make sure that the economy gets in order. And now there's a time when we've sent people who have this intellectual capital to come and stabilize the state. Don't disrupt them. Let them do their thing. Let's get our economy working. And those other issues can come tomorrow. They're not a priority today. They are important issues, but not very vital to be at the center of agitating for this one at this particular time against the economy.
You're calling them meaningless freedoms, abductions have stopped, things like that. Those are things that are hard fought for, one,
Yes.
entrenched in the constitution over time, and that other, what should I call it? The preserve of your party leader, Raila Odinga. He was known for fighting for those freedoms that you're now calling meaningless. The things that he has, put aside. You're saying, let's put aside all these things that we have fought so long and hard for, and get into power, take our piece of the cake, and then go right back to business.
A poor person cannot enjoy political liberties. A poor person cannot enjoy democracy. A poor person cannot enjoy human rights. What starts first is economic empowerment, economic rights first. Then other things can be enjoyed. You cannot enjoy human rights when you're poor.
I don't think
when
they can
you're hungry.
exist separately.
Yeah, the idea
I don't think
is
they can exist separately.
these things are entrenched in the constitution.
Yes, but
if I say, Oscar, you have a right to life, you have a right to education, you have a right to this and that, those are guaranteed for you regardless of your economic status or not, right?
Yes, yes.
And while people can say, you know what, it is really, really hard for me to make a living, that shouldn't remove them from the right pool.
And that is why I'm saying what he said was not meaningless, but what we are saying
the timing.
that political rights without economic rights is incomplete.
Incomplete, yes, but you're
It's
saying let's
incomplete.
put them aside
No.
while we seek this economic empowerment, or while we'll seek our cake.
First we eat.
Also, yes, but first we eat. Also, if it is when Opio Wandai is in power and John Badi are in government that the people of Nyanza eat, what happens to every other community if we continue that type of thinking? If I must have a CS for Treasury who comes from my community and a CS for Energy who comes from my community, then should we have 47 CSs?
The ideal situation, not the realistic situation. The ideal situation, Janet, is that what ought to happen is that anybody at the center should be able to serve everybody who belongs to this state, who belongs to this nation. The realistic position, it doesn't happen that way. The realistic position is that we have skewed distribution of resources because of how we organize our politics, How do you explain, for example, the other day we got Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Hospital to a parastatal. That means it gets around 15 billion from the exchequer, directly from the exchequer. Now it's not being managed by Kisumu County government. It's not being funded by Kisumu County government. We only have 10 IC units in that hospital, and that serves the entire Nyanza. In, for example, Kiambu County, we have 3 level 5 hospitals plus KU, which has also gotten to parastatal, which was just started the other day. So there's distribution of resources. There are places that have not enjoyed this thing. The ideal situation is what you're talking about, which we all want to achieve, that ideal situation. But in reality, the center controls a lot. Mm-hmm. Center controls 15%. And even the devolution we talked about, which we brought in 2010, has not been able to correct the inequalities. The marginalized areas have still been marginalized because people with resources can always gang up to build campaign, do big campaigns, bribe judges, for example, get the best lawyers to argue their cases in court, for example, and the political power goes somewhere, and it comes with economic power. It doesn't get redistributed down the stream. And the trickle-down effect that we always think that will happen does not happen, especially when you antagonize the center.
So why not fix? Why not question? Why do I have to be close to the center to get resources? As an opposition, that is the perfect position to be questioning those things.
We've done that. We've done that for 60 years in the right way, and it has not worked.
60 years is young for a democracy.
It's young for a democracy, but in a democracy where people mobilize based on their ethnic extraction.
Again, why not change that? Why is the solution to get close to the seat of power? Because then it'll be your turn to eat. For the rest of Kenya, it is waiting. It's just, let me bide my time until it's my turn to eat. Next community gets in power, they eat. Like that. That means we have how many election cycles before we get to a point where any part of Kenya has gotten any form of development?
That is why when we sent these experts and these people to inject what we call intellectual capital into government to deal with the core of the problem. Because I told you when Kenya Kwanza took over, probably it lacked that intellectual capital. And we are requesting, don't disrupt. Let us see if it works and let us get back stability. Because I told you, the lowest we got to was bringing the military to our streets. And what Odinga went for, say that, okay, wait a minute. There's a Gen Z problem, and there's this revolution that is going on. For example, the killing of these young people in Parliament, that was bad. But again, do I blame it on the center sometimes? It could be a problem of our police not able to manage crowds because they were overwhelmed. Why do you shoot them? If they had better ways, good training on crowd management, they could have done things differently, for example. But what we're saying that removing our military off the street so that we are able to sit down and have a conversation and get some intellectual capital to this system, to aid this system so that we get political stability, so that we move as a people and be able to help everybody else get a transformer that everybody needs.
It almost sounds like don't criticize until further notice. It's like for now, don't rock the boat. Don't let us don't criticize. Say less until further notice.
Other democracies are not other democracies. For example, other jurisdiction which we can now talk about. We didn't talk about China because it's a communist place, because you're not allowed to talk. One media, one everything. Mm-hmm. But probably, I don't want to be seen to be like I'm against democracy, against these rights. But still, it works for them. So that system has worked elsewhere also, where we have a government that works and does everything for the people. And we know the Chinese miracle, that China was nowhere the other day, but probably sometimes too much. And this is what Atuol is talking about, which he has an opinion, and he's talking about that every right comes with a responsibility. There's no blanket that you just enjoy your rights. A right comes with a responsibility.
A responsibility is not a curtailment.
It's not a curtailment, but it can look like a curtailment when we discuss it. When you discuss it, it can look like somebody's curtailing. But he has this point that, okay, yes, everybody is throwing off. Like currently, how are you managing the nation? Through social media. It influences everything. But in social media, everybody throws their chaff into the system. It needs experts, again, to bring this public opinion, to put them together so that it becomes a public policy. But everybody, like TikTok, for example, it is something that is a Chinese
App, yes.
app, yeah, but it doesn't work in China because, yeah, you know, so
It works in China.
It
my
does.
friend.
okay,
I
sorry.
see. It seems that you're okay with us putting aside.
No,
Yes, because you've said they're not as important, or they can't come before economic empowerment. If you're not close to the center, then you're not getting economic empowerment.
and Janet said
Therefore-
that they go hand in hand. Janet said that they go hand in hand.
They do.
They do.
They do. So
that,
then,
that economic rights and these democratic and political rights, liberties, go hand in hand. That was our position.
Well, I think it's also the point Mariam was making was, I don't know, it sounds, what I think the point is being made is you cannot, I think, speak to a derailment because there's somebody pushing a certain conversation that is of interest to the to the nation. Right? But Mariam asked it very appropriately. In fact, I'm the one who is remixing her words. That everything matters.
Yes.
And it shouldn't wait because we have to see how things go first.
And you can see where we are coming from. Yes, everything matters, but you can see where we're coming from, and that is what Latif asked. Is it a community thing? I said yes, because we've been at the center. We've led the struggle for this right, for these 60 years, what Marion is talking about, and us have not benefited from the spoils of war.
Can I throw a spanner in the works? Maybe I don't know. I might derail this conversation. I'm feeling like this sense of instability within the party might be speaking to a sense of power tugs because there's some sort of eventual succession plan that needs to be in the works. I've completely gone, but I think it plays in. Is there some kind of succession plan? Is there a sense of, and I'll go back to the ideologies, because we will see a shift in this party in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
I suppose it's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
So is part of this in what I think is infighting?
Is it succession?
Yeah.
Is it also affecting?
I think in terms of ideology, the young generation, where the millennials, where Oscar is different from what we've always struggled for. We are saying that it's enough for this as an ideology, and there's this party or this area or this one. We've done so much around this area. We need to change now and focus on this area so that when we go to elections, the price of rice, the price of sugar or sugarcane becomes a national agenda. We've had the price of milk, the price of coffee, the price of what becoming a national agenda. We also feel like the price of what happened to the fish industry, for example? What happened to the cotton industry, for example? It is the economy. Agitation for these rights are also important, but our young, our educated, for example, if you go, Nyanza, we have, like Siaya, for example, where I come from, child mortality is the highest. Where Orengo comes from in Uganda, we've never even had a bank. And when there's no bank, that means there are no people to put money and withdraw. You get me right? And this marginalization has gone on and on and on, while our leadership has been focused in agitating for these political liberties. Yes, we've brought a new constitution. We've brought a devolution. Now, what is the problem? Why is it not working for us? And we're saying we don't even support that the devolution thing is given only 15%. We need to agitate further. As Oscar Omondi, I've always supported that not even the devolution, but federalism. Federalism, 14 counties, and we don't have to bring our resources to Kenya Revenue Authority. Within the 14 counties, we can have 14 revenue authorities so that when you collect your taxes down there, we send a little bit for management of national defense and all this, but when we collect, because all the devolved units have different intentions, for example.
Oscar, we can't mtuetu ourselves out of this hole, unfortunately. If it is your turn to eat and you eat, what happens to everybody else again? There needs to be an interrogation of why Luo Nyanza for the longest time has not gotten as much development as Region X.
Yes.
Why the north of Kenya looks completely different from the rest of the country and people don't even feel like they're there. Those are things that we need to fix. But Mtuetu will not fix that. It might bring a temporary reprieve, maybe a feeling of, ululation or elation that I can see someone who looks like me in government. But at the end of the day, there's nothing significant that's going to push the country forward from saying my person is in power, let me support.
I know.
No administration has not had a Luo in cabinet. None. Not Kenyatta, not Moi, not Kibaki, not Uhuru, not Ruto. All of them have had Luos in cabinet, Luos as PSs.
And I told you the problem started. Where did the rain start beating us? Session paper number 10 of 1965, which seemed to marginalize many areas, including Mandera and Turkana and all these places, because it pushed our resources to high potential areas, believing that there will be a trickle-down effect. 60 years down the line, it has not happened.
And that's the argument that Mariam is making.
That's the problem that
we have to holistically fix this problem, not by saying that now let's bring in so-and-so from our region into government, into this docket in ministry, so that our issues can be addressed.
And at the break, I told you probably, because whatever discussion we're having, Latif, it's a very difficult discussion to have because it's not very popular again. You know, fighting for human rights is a popular thing. You know, it is fashionable that, oh, we are fighting for human rights. It is a very good fashionable. Whatever discussion I'm bringing, it's a bit not very easy to discuss whatever we're discussing. And probably, you know, Switzerland have a system where they have a rotational presidency. That this region have the presidents, then that region, then that region. It works for them. It has worked for them. In Nigeria, they have a system of rotational again, where they have the East and the West. That if the president comes from the East, next time the president comes from the West. Why? Because people in political power contain, influence economic power. And for some people in Nigeria to get in the East, they have their one.
So what's your proposed fix for Kenya?
I've said, for example, for Marion's sake and for the sake of the discussion, probably
rotational president.
Because at the end of the day, for the last 65 years, for the last 70 years, we've had two communities at the helm of power, and you know that person who is at the helm of power controls 85%, and it has led to an equal distribution of resources down the level and the marginalized areas, which Marion states. How do we get ourselves out of this? And it is what brings the Mutuwetu problem, which we are trying to go away from. And when we brought devolution, we thought the Mutuwetu thing would be a thing of the past. But now, 15 years down the line, we are still back there because we don't get what we ought to have gotten. And that is the agitation. And that is why when one of us try to antagonize the center, we say, okay, don't stop it now. I mean, our kids are dying out of this. Can you just hold on a bit? You get me right? It's because of you see, what causes something like, what leads to ethnic conflict? Ethnic conflict is caused by fears of the past, fears of the future lived in the past. Because we fear if the past have looked like this, what will the future look like? And we've tried to manage these systems with a devolution, with a new constitution, with all this, but it's still not working. And probably it's a good discussion with the center that, okay, the center, look at us like this. We are not people for mandamanos all the time.
We are not fighting you.
We are not fighting you.
Give us something.
Give us something, and that is the thing. You know, we are not antagonizing you.
Okay.
And that was the conversation.
That's the logic that you're pushing.
That is the logic.
How do you say? What's that word what's the phrase in Luo? Pesa ipendi kelele.
Peso luro koko.
Peso luro koko. Is that what you're saying?
What you're saying is not that tukondani sasa. We say we've injected political social capital into the system. Let the system work for everybody now economically, because agitation for these political rights sometimes they look meaningless when we cannot get economic rights too.
All right. Peso luro koko. Oscar Omondi is a political scientist and a lecturer of political science, and also one of the Luo professionals who spoke a couple of weeks ago, who was very, very active on politics. He's been our guest. Keep it here for more. In the next conversation, we take it to the coast and we look at coast and the marginalization in the coast, and whether the people of the coast also feel like they are represented well by this administration and previous administrations as well. Back in a moment.